My mother-in-law secretly emailed our wedding venue a fake guest list, removed 30 of my family and friends, and replaced them with her own. On our wedding day, my relatives were turned away at the door. I'm Dan. I am 32 male. My wife, Rosie, female, is 30. We'd been together for 5 years before deciding to get married. Roz's mom, Glenn, my mother-in-law, is a single mother. Roz's dad isn't in the picture, hasn't been for a long time. Glenn always presented herself as a devoted mom. And for the most part, Rosie had a decent, if sometimes intense, relationship with her. I got along with Glenn well enough in the beginning. There wasn't much to indicate what was coming. We'd have dinners, holidays, the usual stuff. She could be a bit overbearing at times, prone to making everything about her, but Rosie was good at managing it, and I figured it was just a personality quirk I could deal with. The wedding planning started about a year before the date we set. We wanted something nice, a celebration with our closest friends and family. We were paying for the majority of it ourselves, with a kind contribution from my parents. Glenn offered us some too, which we initially accepted. The first signs of trouble began with the guest list. Rosie and I sat down and made our lists. We had a venue with a capacity of 150, which seemed more than enough. My list was about 70 people. Rosie's was about 60, including Glenn and a few of her immediate relatives. This left a comfortable buffer. We showed Glenn the general breakdown. She commented that she had quite a few friends and family members she'd like to invite. We told her to give us a list, and we'd see what we could do, assuming it would be a handful of people. Her initial list had 40 names on it. Many of these were people Rosie barely knew or hadn't seen since she was a child. Some were Glenn's own friends, who had no connection to me or Rosie as a couple. We explained that we couldn't accommodate that many, as it would mean cutting our own friends or my family members. Glenn became quite put out. She argued that as the mother of the bride and as someone who was contributing financially, she should have a significant say. She claimed it was important for her to have her people there to support her on Rosie's big day. We tried to compromise. We went back and forth and managed to whittle her additions down to about 15 people that Rosie felt were reasonable enough to include. People who had at least some connection to her life over the years. This meant our total guest count was now pushing 145, close to the limit but manageable. Glenn seemed to accept this, though not without some pointed remarks about how restrictive we were being and how other people let their mothers invite more guests. We used a shared online spreadsheet for RSVP and seating arrangements, which Glenn had viewing access to so she could see who was confirmed. My cousin Rick, who uses a wheelchair due to a car accident years ago, was on my list from day one. He's family, and we're close. His RSVP was one of the first ones back. The wedding day arrived. The ceremony was beautiful. Rosie looked incredible. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. The problem started when we arrived at the reception venue after taking photos. One of my ushers, my close friend Tom, pulled me aside. He looked very uncomfortable. He told me that several of my invited guests, people who had RSVP had arrived at the venue, and their names weren't on the list at the door. The venue staff, working off a printed list they'd been given, were turning them away. I was confused. I went to the entrance. Sure enough, a few of my aunts and uncles were standing outside, looking bewildered. They said they'd been told there was no space, that the venue was at capacity. I immediately found the venue manager. She showed me the final guest list she had received. It had been emailed to her 3 days prior from Glenn's email address. Glenn had apparently called the venue coordinator, claiming to be helping Rosie with last-minute changes, and had sent a revised list. I scanned it. About 30 of my guests, including some of my closest family friends, and even a couple of relatives, were gone. In their place were 30 names I didn't recognize. Glenn's friends, distant relatives of hers, people we had explicitly said we couldn't invite. My cousin Rick's name was still on it, thankfully, but many others were not. The venue manager explained that Glenn had told them there was a strict fire code limit of 120. Our original venue capacity was 150, and we were aiming for around 145. After her additions, Glenn had told the venue that due to unexpected last-minute acceptances from the bride's side, they had to trim the list, and she had helped by providing the updated version, prioritizing essential family. Rosie found me, then saw the commotion in my face, and I quickly explained what Tom had told me and what the manager showed me. She was utterly horrified. She looked like she was going to be sick. She immediately confronted Glenn, who was already inside, schmoozing with her newly invited guests. Glenn's initial defense was blatant denial. She said she had no idea what Rosie was talking about. Then, when Rosie pressed her, showing her the email on the manager's phone, Glenn switched tactics. She said very loudly, so her friends could hear, that the venue had sprung a sudden capacity issue on them at the last minute. and she'd done her best to salvage the situation by ensuring Roz's closest family were there. She claimed she had to make some tough choices, and that it was all a misunderstanding, that I was blowing out of proportion. She said she tried to call me but couldn't get through. I had no missed calls. Rosie was furious and started to cry. She told Glenn she had no right. There was a heated, whispered argument. Rosie tried to get the venue to allow my turned-away guests in, but many had already left, deeply offended and embarrassed. We managed to get a few who were still lingering nearby into the venue, but it was chaotic and awful. The atmosphere was immediately soured for me and my family, who were aware of what happened. My parents were incredibly upset, but trying to keep composed for our sake. The reception continued, but it felt like a sham. Then came the toasts. My best man gave a lovely speech. My dad said some wonderful words. Then it was Glenn's turn. She was already visibly intoxicated. She'd been hitting the wine hard from the moment she arrived. She grabbed the microphone, swayed a bit, and began what I can only describe as a character assassination disguised as a toast. She started by making passive-aggressive comments about how some people, clearly meaning me and my family, didn't understand the sacrifices a mother makes. Then she moved on to direct mockery. She made a joke about my parents' long marriage, implying it was boring. She made fun of my profession. Then she gestured towards my cousin Rick, who was seated at a table near the front. She said something along the lines of, "And look, even Dan's cousin Rick managed to roll in for the occasion." We weren't sure if the venue was accessible enough for his grand entrance. She then did a little shimmy, mimicking someone struggling, and laughed, looking around for affirmation from her friends. Rick's face just crumpled. He's a confident guy, but this was public, cruel, and from the mother of the bride. My aunt and uncle, Rick's parents, were furious that I let this happen. There was a stunned, horrified silence for most of the room, broken only by the nervous laughter of some of Glenn's new guests. Rosie was staring at her mother, white-faced, tears streaming down her face. I stood up, I walked to the DJ, took the microphone from Glenn's hand mid-ramble about something else awful, and simply said, "Thank you, Glenn. That's enough." I then asked the DJ to put some music on. She looked surprised, then glared at me. The rest of the reception was a blur of damage control and quiet apologies to my family. Many of my original guests who did make it were either confused by the unfamiliar faces or had heard what happened at the door and were angry on our behalf. Rick and his parents left shortly after Glenn's toast. Rosie was inconsolable for a good portion of the evening, hiding in the bridal suite. I spent most of it trying to reassure my family and feeling a rage I've rarely experienced. The next morning, Rosie and I talked. There wasn't much to discuss, really. We were both in agreement. Glenn had deliberately sabotaged our wedding day, humiliated my family, and shown a level of cruelty that was staggering. Rosie said she didn't recognize the woman her mother had become, or perhaps she'd been blind to it before. We decided to cut off all contact with Glenn. We blocked her number, her social media, everything. Glenn, of course, did not take this quietly. She started calling Rosie's friends, her extended family, trying to paint herself as the victim. She claimed we had overreacted to a few harmless jokes and a simple mistake with the guest list. She said Rosie was being brainwashed by me. The next few weeks were filled with an onslaught of messages from Glenn via anyone who would pass them on, flying monkeys, as they say. She sent tearful emails, which went to spam, but Rosie checked once out of a grim curiosity, rambling voicemails to Roz's old numbers, and even tried to show up at our apartment, but the concierge turned her away as per our instructions. We maintained a strict no-contact policy. It was hard on Rosie, but she was resolute. The betrayal was too deep. About 2 months after the wedding, Glenn escalated things. She started posting vague, pity-seeking statuses on social media about being abandoned by her only child and how some families don't appreciate a mother's love. Then she got more specific, making veiled accusations about me being controlling and isolating Rosie. She told a sob story to anyone who would listen about how she'd made a tiny error with the guest list due to stress, and that her humorous toast was taken the wrong way by people who are too sensitive. She was trying to rewrite the narrative entirely, painting us as the unreasonable, cruel ones. The final straw was when a distant aunt of Rosie's called Rosie in tears, saying Glenn had told her that we had uninvited Glenn's friends at the last minute, and that I had verbally abused Glenn at the reception, causing her to get flustered during her speech. This was the opposite of what happened. I had a recording. A friend of mine, knowing Glenn could be a bit of a loose cannon when drinking, had secretly filmed the speeches on his phone. He'd sent it to me the day after the wedding, mostly as a "can you believe this" kind of thing. The video clearly showed Glenn's drunken state, her mocking words about my family, and the specific awful comments she made about Rick, followed by his devastated reaction and her callous laughter. It also showed me calmly taking the microphone from her. After hearing about Glenn's latest lies to Rosie's aunt, I saw red. Rosie was distraught that her mother was spreading such fabrications. So I did something. I posted the video clip of Glenn's toast, specifically the part where she mocks Rick, on my own private social media, visible only to friends and family. I didn't add much commentary, just something like, since there seems to be a lot of misinformation about what happened at our wedding, here's a glimpse of Glenn's behavior during her toast. This was after she secretly altered our guest list to remove half of my family and friends. The reaction was immediate. Many family members, especially on Roz's side, who had only heard Glenn's version, were horrified. They saw the truth. Glenn's attempts to garner sympathy backfired spectacularly. She was exposed. She tried to claim the video was edited or taken out of context, but it was clearly raw footage. She has now been effectively banned from all wider family events by general consensus. Uncles, aunts, cousins on Roz's side have told her they are appalled by her behavior. Rosie hasn't spoken a word to her since the wedding day. And after the video, Glenn has stopped her public campaign, probably out of sheer embarrassment and a lack of any remaining support. So here's why I'm writing this. I did it for posting that video. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who read my original post and commented. I've read through everything. I appreciate the support and the various perspectives, even those that question my actions. It's given me a lot to process, though ultimately my stance hasn't really changed. A number of people asked for some clarifications, so I'll try to address the main ones. My cousin Rick. Rick is 28. The accident that put him in a wheelchair happened when he was 19. He's an incredibly resilient and good-natured person, but he's had his share of struggles with people's insensitivity. He and I grew up together. He's more like a brother. My entire family is very protective of him. For Glenn to single him out with such malice was beyond belief. After they left the reception, my uncle, his father, called me the next day. He was incandescent with rage at Glenn, but told me not to let it further ruin our day. Rick, according to my aunt, was quiet for a few days, but then told his parents he didn't want them to dwell on it. He's faced bullies before. When I told him much later, after I posted the video, what I'd done, he simply said, "Good. Some people only understand consequences." Guest list management. The initial guest list was a collaborative Google sheet. Rosie and I listed our people. Then we allocated a certain number to Glenn, after her initial request for 40 names was discussed down to 15. She was given view-only access to the main list so she could see the RSVP coming in. We were handling all the direct communication with the venue. Glenn was not supposed to be an intermediary. Her claim that she called the venue to help with last-minute changes was a complete fabrication of authority she never had. She bypassed us entirely. The email with the altered list came from her personal email directly to the venue's event coordinator, who it seems didn't think to double-check with us. Or perhaps Glenn was very convincing in her portrayal of being helpful. We found out later that Glenn had called the coordinator a few times in the week leading up, asking questions likely to build a rapport or appear involved so her final email wouldn't raise immediate red flags. Roz's knowledge beforehand. Rosie had absolutely no idea her mother was going to do this. She was as blindsided and devastated as I was. Glenn had been a bit difficult about her initial guest requests, but Rosie thought they had reached a firm compromise. The idea that her mother would go behind our backs and fundamentally alter the guest list for our wedding, especially removing my family, was inconceivable to her. She trusted her mother, and that trust was obliterated. The last-minute venue limit excuse. This was pure fiction from Glenn. The venue contract clearly stated 150 capacity. There was no sudden change. When Glenn was confronted by Rosie at the reception, after initially denying everything, she loudly proclaimed that the venue manager had informed her, Glenn, of a reduced capacity of 120 people that very morning due to unexpected fire safety regulations. She said she had to act quickly to save the day and ensure the most important people could attend. The venue manager, when I spoke to her again later to understand what happened, confirmed Glenn had told her the guest list needed to be reduced to 120 due to issues from the couple's side and provided the new list as the final corrected version. Glenn played both sides against each other, fixing things on the spot. When Rosie found out, she was crying, but also furious. She immediately went to the venue manager with me and demanded they honor our original list. The manager was apologetic but explained she had already set up based on the list Glenn provided, and some of my guests had already been turned away and left. Rosie then got on the phone, calling some of my relatives who had been turned away, apologizing profusely and begging them to come back if they were still nearby. A few did, but the damage was done. Some were too upset, and frankly, I didn't blame them. Rosie also told Glenn in no uncertain terms at the reception during that initial confrontation that what she did was unforgivable. Glenn's public guilt tripping. This mainly happened on Facebook and through phone calls to extended family. On Facebook, there were vague posts like, "A mother gives everything for her child only to be cast aside when someone new comes along." Or, "So sad when families are torn apart by misunderstandings and ingratitude." With family, she was more direct, spinning a narrative where she was a helpful, concerned mother whose efforts were misconstrued. She claimed I was controlling Rosie, that we were ashamed of her friends, the ones she added, and that her toast was just light-hearted teasing that my overly sensitive family couldn't take. She told one of Roz's aunts that I had screamed at her at the reception, which was a complete lie. Where the video was posted, I posted the 45-second clip, the relevant part of her speech about Rick and my family, to my own Facebook page. My privacy settings are friends and family only. This includes most of my relatives and a good number of Roz's family members who are connected with me there or became connected after the wedding. It wasn't a fully public post for the entire internet, but it was intended for the people Glenn was actively trying to manipulate with her lies. Reading the comments, many of you confirmed what I already felt. Glenn's actions were a massive betrayal and deliberately destructive. The decision to post the video was made when I realized that Glenn's campaign of lies was causing Rosie significant pain and was successfully misleading some family members who weren't there to witness it firsthand. Rosie was on the verge of making a public statement herself, but she was so distressed I couldn't let her carry that burden. Glenn was banking on people just hearing her side or on the "it's family, we should forgive" angle. My reasoning was simple. Glenn made a public spectacle at our wedding, humiliating my family. Then she began a public campaign of lies to defame us and paint herself as a victim. My response, posting the video, was also public within our shared circle, using her own words and actions as undeniable proof. It wasn't about revenge in the sense of wanting to inflict pain for its own sake. It was about stopping her harmful narrative with unequivocal truth. It was to protect Rosie from further gaslighting and to give our family the true picture. The action of posting the video was already taken before my original post here. The action since then has been to maintain our stance of no contact with Glenn. After the video circulated, Glenn did try to reach out to Rosie once via a new email address. The email was a torrent of accusations, self-pity, and demands for an apology from us for publicly shaming her. She accused Rosie of letting me destroy her family. Rosie read it, showed it to me, and then deleted it without replying. We reinforced blocks on any new numbers or profiles she might create. My parents also sent Glenn a formal letter, very brief and to the point, stating that her behavior was reprehensible, that she is no longer welcome in their home or at any event they host, and that they expect her to cease all attempts to contact me or Rosie. This was their own initiative, but we supported it. The immediate outcome of the video going semi-public within our family and friends circle was dramatic. Several of Roz's relatives who had initially offered Glenn sympathy called Rosie to apologize. They said they had no idea it was that bad and were shocked by Glenn's cruelty in the video, especially towards Rick. The "she was just drunk" or "it was a misunderstanding" excuses evaporated once people saw it for themselves. Glenn's brother, Rosie's uncle, called her. He was apparently furious with Glenn. He told Rosie that he had a very stern conversation with his sister, telling her that her behavior was a disgrace and that she needed to seriously reevaluate her life. He also told Rosie that while he loves his sister, he and his wife would be taking a significant step back from her for the foreseeable future, as they didn't want to be associated with that kind of behavior. Glenn herself, after that one angry email, has gone silent. Her social media, which was previously quite active, has had no new activity. We hear through the grapevine that a few remaining family members who still have minimal, reluctant contact with her, for some reasons related to older family members, that she is furious, embarrassed, and attempting to tell anyone who will still listen that the video is fake or manipulated. But no one is buying it. Rosie felt a sense of relief after the video was out and the truth was known. The stress of being painted as the villain by her own mother and people believing it was immense. Seeing family members understand and support her has been validating. She is still deeply hurt by her mother's actions, and there's a grieving process for the mother she thought she had, but her resolve not to have Glenn in her life is stronger than ever. She said she feels like a weight has been lifted, even amidst the sadness of it all. The attempts from Glenn to cause rifts largely failed once the evidence was clear. People took sides, and the vast majority sided with the truth. Update 2. 2 years after the original post, roughly 1 year and 10 months after Update 1. It's been nearly 2 years since the wedding, and about a year and 10 months since my last update here. A lot of water has gone under the bridge. Or perhaps the water level around Glenn has simply receded, leaving her on a rather deserted island of her own making. Glenn is still completely cut off from our lives. Rosie has not spoken to her since the wedding day. I have had no contact. The no-contact rule has remained absolute. In the months following the video incident, Glenn apparently made a few more desperate attempts to regain some footing, not with us directly, but within the wider family. We heard secondhand that she tried to organize a family meeting to clear the air, which everyone declined, and sent overly sentimental birthday cards to some of Rosie's cousins, presumably hoping to re-establish some sympathetic contact. These efforts were met with polite but firm disinterest. The damage from her wedding behavior and the subsequent proof via the video was too severe. Her brother, Roz's uncle, has maintained very minimal contact with Glenn, mostly out of a sense of obligation for any dire emergencies, but their relationship is by all accounts extremely strained. He and his wife have become much closer to Rosie, offering her a stable, supportive family connection on that side, which has been a positive development. Roz's first birthday after the wedding was difficult. It was the first one ever that she didn't get a call or card from her mom because Glenn was blocked and knew any mail would be returned. She was sad. We've had other family events, holidays, birthdays, and a significant anniversary for my parents. Glenn has not been present at any of them, nor has her absence been a major point of discussion beyond perhaps a brief, sad acknowledgement among older relatives that it's a shame she brought this on herself. No one has tried to pressure us to reconcile. I think the video served as a permanent deterrent to any "but she's your mother" arguments. It's hard to advocate for someone whose cruelty was so visibly demonstrated. We hear occasional snippets about Glenn from Rosie's uncle. She is apparently quite isolated. Many of the friends she invited to the wedding by sacrificing our guests have, it seems, drifted away now that she's no longer the fun, life-of-the-party person, but rather someone associated with a significant family scandal. She is reportedly bitter and continues to believe she is the wrong party, but she has no platform left to voice this beyond perhaps a very small dwindling circle. She has not, to our knowledge, made any further attempts to slander us publicly or to family. The video exposure effectively shut that down. My disabled cousin Rick is doing well. He appreciates that we took such a strong stand. He said that Glenn's comments, while hurtful, were more shocking because of the context. Our wedding and who said them. Rosie's mother. He knows his worth and Glenn's inability to see it as her problem, not his. He has attended all our family gatherings since and is always treated with the love and respect he deserves. The incident made our family even more protective of him and more aware of the casual cruelty some people are capable of. So that's where things stand. Life has continued. Our marriage is strong. Cutting Glenn out was a drastic step, but it was a necessary one for our peace and well-being. I don't anticipate posting any further updates on this. There's not much more to say. She's out of our lives, and that's where she will remain. Thanks again to everyone who offered their thoughts back when this was raw. It helped to know we weren't crazy for reacting the way we did.